They never cared before, now they only call for help. The line between being dismissed and being erased is thin, but I knew it well. For 20 years, I was a ghost at the family table, an inconvenient truth they desperately wanted to forget. I'm Adam, 38, and they never cared before, now they only call for help. The root of the problem was simplicity. My father, George, 65, built his legacy in corporate law. His world was solid mahogany, leather-bound books, and predictable, hourly billing. My older sister, Chloe, 40, married a successful property developer, Marcus, 42, ensuring her life was equally stable and socially visible. My path, however, involved the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean and complex fiber optic data, and because they couldn't explain it at a country club mixer, they dismissed it entirely. My passion was subsea infrastructure mapping. I started a company, Trench Systems, dedicated to utilizing proprietary drone technology to inspect and map critical transoceanic data cables and pipelines. It was technically brilliant, intensely risky, and years ahead of its time. To them, it sounded like I was playing with expensive, leaky toys. The dismissal was a low-frequency hum that vibrated through every interaction. When I was 28, I needed a small loan, a truly minor amount, to secure a crucial piece of deep-water sensing equipment that would finalize my prototype. I presented the detailed business plan to George, complete with market analysis and projected returns. He didn't read past the first page. He just leaned back in his leather chair, the epitome of predictable success, and sighed. Adam, just take the paralegal job Chloe offered you. You're smart. You're just wasting it on this fantasy. This isn't a career, it's a liability. We'll pay off your student debt if you stop asking us to fund this sinking ship. He didn't refuse the loan, he refused my dream. He offered me charity to stop being myself. The subtle cruelty was the worst part. Chloe was no better. She was always perfectly dressed, impeccably supportive of Marcus's generic real estate ventures, and utterly condescending toward me. If she called, it was never to ask about Trench Systems, it was to gently lecture me on the virtues of a 401k. It just hurts, Mom, Adam, she'd say, her voice dripping with staged concern. Why can't you just find a nice, normal consulting job so we can stop worrying about you? The last time I saw them before the silence was at Chloe's extravagant 35th birthday party. I was attempting to explain the complex, mathematical challenge of maintaining sub-millimeter precision at 10,000 feet below the surface. George interrupted me mid-sentence to loudly toast Marcus for closing on a new strip mall development. I stood there, holding a champagne flute, realizing my entire existence was a nuisance, a shadow they needed to clean up. I was invisible until I asked for something, and then I was only visible as a failure. I left that night without saying goodbye, the sound of their forced, privileged laughter following me out the door. The bitterness wasn't about the money, it was the realization that their love was completely conditional, tied only to a type of success I refused to pursue. I cut them off completely. No calls, no emails, no social media presence. They accepted the silence quickly, filing me away as the relative who finally flamed out, the one who couldn't handle the real world, and probably took that paralegal job after all. Their narrative of my failure was more comforting than the reality of my risk. My life became the antithesis of theirs. I spent years in dockyards, sleeping in warehouses, and watching weather patterns. I traded the mahogany office for the relentless, freezing pressure of the North Atlantic. The loneliness was absolute. My only company was the hum of my servers and the occasional, necessary interaction with skeptical marine engineers. I used their rejection as a constant, grinding pressure. Every successful data retrieval, every contract secured, was a silent, furious rebuttal to George's dismissal. Trench Systems wasn't built on charm, it was built on proprietary physics and relentless data integrity. We cracked the code on long-term, high-resolution mapping, providing telecom giants and energy companies with unprecedented insights into their aging underwater assets. It was slow, agonizing work, but the results were revolutionary. By the time I was 37, Trench Systems was no longer a startup. We were the global leader in subsea data integrity, holding essential contracts with 3 major international corporations. My technology had become indispensable to global infrastructure, a multi-billion-dollar valuation achieved with total, aggressive secrecy. My success was the opposite of their visible, superficial wealth. Mine was necessary, quiet, and monumental. I was strategically invisible to the public, preferring to let the technology speak for itself. But such a massive, essential player in the global infrastructure market couldn't hide forever. The moment of the catastrophic reveal was inevitable. It came when we signed a $500 million contract with a government agency. The news was too big to contain. The Wall Street Journal ran a detailed profile on the company and its intensely private founder. The headline was unavoidable, confirming everything they had dismissed. Trench Systems, the unseen giant mapping the digital abyss. I wasn't in the country when the story broke. I was purposefully deep in the Pacific, managing a deployment. I let the news hit them like a tidal wave. The voicemails started immediately. They weren't congratulations, they were panicked attempts at validation. Chloe's voice, usually a gentle purr, was frantic and high-pitched. Adam, darling, we are just so proud. Daddy and I always knew you were a visionary. We told everyone at the club we were just allowing you your space to incubate your genius. Please call me back. You absolutely must come to dinner. We have so many synergistic opportunities to discuss. Her words confirmed my bitter truth. She hadn't gained a brother, she had gained a new social asset. She wasn't calling out of love, she was calling to leverage my status for her own gain. George's message was colder, professional, and utterly insulting. Adam, this is your father. There are significant estate planning and tax implications we need to discuss now that you've formalized your valuation. And I need to know the capital structure of Trench Systems immediately. I've already cleared my calendar. Call me back. He had seen the number, the dollar sign, and immediately slotted me into his legal framework. I was a problem to be managed, a resource to be controlled, still not his son. I finally returned the calls a week later, maintaining a tone of professional, distant courtesy. I listened to their forced, gushing praise, their awkward attempts to rewrite our shared history, claiming they were the ones who taught me to be resilient and independent. What would you do? Confront them immediately with their past neglect, or let them believe their convenient lie, knowing you hold all the power now? I chose the latter. I simply thanked them for their continued well wishes and politely declined every social invitation. I was not there to be their trophy, I was there to observe their slow, inevitable reckoning. The reckoning arrived with devastating speed. Marcus, Chloe's husband, was a master of leveraging debt against real estate development. His latest mega project, a high-end coastal resort, collapsed catastrophically when an undisclosed environmental issue halted construction and the bank called in the loans. The dominoes fell hard. George, who had invested heavily in the project and personally guaranteed many of Marcus's loans, was facing professional ruin. The collapse didn't just affect their liquid assets, it threatened the very foundation of George's retirement funds and the family home. Their entire world of predictable stability was crumbling around them. The new calls were different. They weren't transactional, they were desperate. They weren't asking me to attend a dinner, they were asking for salvation. I got a call late one evening from Chloe. She wasn't wearing her perfect mask anymore. Her voice was raw, tearful, and broken. Adam, please, we are going to lose the house. Daddy is having heart palpitations. I don't care about the money, I just need stability for my kids. You're the only one who can help us. You're so smart. You have connections. Just tell us what to do. For the first time in 20 years, she wasn't talking about herself or her status. She was talking about raw, desperate need. George's call was the hardest to listen to. The lawyer's professional veneer was completely gone. He was defeated, scared, and, worst of all, humbled. I was wrong, Adam, he choked out. About everything. I was so focused on what was safe that I missed what was brilliant. Please, I need your advice on the legal filings. I need Trench Systems' corporate legal team to look at the exposure. We need a way out. He wasn't asking for money, which was the final, agonizing irony. He was asking for my expertise, the very intellect he had mocked for 2 decades. They never cared about my well-being, but now they needed my specific, despised skill set to survive. I have the power to save them. The legal fee to extricate George from the worst of the liability is negligible to Trench Systems. I could stabilize Chloe and her children with a single, private trust fund. I could give them back their comfortable world and the stable retirement George always preached. But sitting here now, in my own quiet office overlooking the city skyline, the question gnaws at me, what am I saving? Am I saving my family, or am I validating the idea that their neglect has no consequence? If I help them, I confirm that conditional love is a viable strategy. They can ignore you when you're down and exploit you when you're up, with no penalty. If I walk away, I gain my ultimate freedom, but I become as cold and transactional as they always were. I flew home for a private meeting with George and Chloe. I didn't meet them at their house or my office. I met them at the entrance to my first, tiny, unheated warehouse space, the one where I slept on a cot. I made them stand there, surrounded by the ghosts of my struggle, while I laid out the terms of my involvement. I didn't ask for apologies or promises. I looked directly at George, whose face was pale and drawn, and I simply stated the cost. This isn't a family intervention. This is a business transaction. My help will be conditional on a legal agreement that gives Trench Systems absolute oversight and control over the restructuring of your finances for the next decade. You will take every piece of professional advice I give you, or I walk away. And you will never, under any circumstance, refer to my work as toys or a liability ever again. I watched the man who called me a failure sign over control of his life to the son he dismissed. I had won the game. I could save them, but I couldn't undo the past. I became their necessary salvation, not their beloved son. The transactional nature of our relationship remains, only the power dynamic has fundamentally shifted. I will save them, but I do it not for forgiveness, but because the alternative, letting them ruin themselves completely, doesn't feel like victory but just another form of self-destruction. The true revenge, I realize, is living a life where their need for me is absolute, while my need for them is zero. I want to know what you think. Is helping them, knowing it validates their past behavior, the right choice, or is cutting them off the only way to achieve true freedom? Let me know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.